upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as free men. Free men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News. Hey, let me say this at the very top. You want to know why that intro was so smooth? You want to know why everything works to a T in the way that it should in perfection every single time? It's because our boy David Sean Thompson is back right now. we love him being back, man. The show's running well. Stuff is working awesome on the back of the production end, man. I'm telling you, dude, it's one of those things where, like, you just don't know what you have until it's gone type thing. You don't know how hard some of this stuff is until you have to put yourself in those shoes and do it yourself. Buddy, David, we love you, man. We love you for what you're doing, and the Real News audience loves you for all the production stuff you're putting in the back end as well. Hey, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's the central landing page for all of the things you're going to be seeing this morning. I'm actually looking at it right now on my screen here. Now, Mixer apparently is no longer a thing. But whatever, the thing will stay up there for at least as long as Mixer is going to be a thing. I think it's just being absorbed into Facebook gaming or whatever. But we also have links on realnewsradio.live to, let's see, minds.com, Parler, ThinkSpot. It's all there for you. A couple little swag items if you want to grab that stuff. There's a QR code bag. There's a T-shirt. There's a mug. We'll throw some other stuff up there as well. But the Minds in particular, I just posted all the live feeds to that with the hashtags included. Got a fantastic show here for you today. Let me start just by saying, man, yesterday was a bit of a debacle of a show. I'm going to go through a couple of recap stories here in just a minute, just to kind of give a catch up as to what I was intending to get across yesterday. Love each and every one of y'all for sticking with us through all that nonsense, though. Let's bring our boy David Sean Thompson in real quick, see how he's doing on his end. David, buddy, how you doing, man? What's up in East Tennessee way?
I'm doing well. Just happy to be here, man. I'm glad you gave me all that glowing praise, but I kind of messed up the intro a couple times. But I think it worked out. But I'm enjoying your house background there.
Yeah, well,
it's a little more simple. You know, it's like cleaner. It's nice. Like
I threw a little accent
Facebook instead of the Facebook, you know.
Down this way, put a little accent light over this way, trying to do something with it, you know what I mean?
I love your accent. It's really nice.
Yeah, and that right there that you see, it's just the ceiling. That's all that is. You know, it's just a blank room.
I thought it was modern art. I mean, it's really cool.
That's right. It's just modern art. Hey, shout out to everybody that's in here with us, Josh, Cody, Jonathan, all that stuff. Y'all the best. Check us out on YouTube as well. We're on Twitch. realnewsradio.live is the best place to find all that stuff. Quick update here. Number 4, goodgovernment.com. Number 4, goodgovernment.com. I don't want to get too much out in front of our skis, but let me give y'all some updates as to the number of signatures we have so far. This, dude, y'all have been... to say you've been incredible, and every single one of y'all that's shared this, every single one of y'all on this program that's just listened to me talk about this, listen to Shine talk about this, getting involved with stuff that we do at AFP, even prior to this property tax issue, you guys are the definition of incredible, all right? If you don't know what's going on, number 4, goodgovernment.com. Metro government passed a 34% property tax increase to pay for what was predicted going to be a $130 million budget shortfall. Now, they thought that it was going to be that much of a shortfall due primarily to what they thought was going to be a lack in sales tax revenue due to the COVID shutdown. We'll fast forward a couple months here. And what we end up having now is new updated numbers after first quarter sales tax comes through. And it looks like instead of a $130 million budget shortfall, it's going to be more like a $20 million budget shortfall. So even the original pitch or the need for that 34% property tax increase is not even there anymore. Nevertheless, number 4, goodgovernment.com, registered voters in Davidson County is the number of is the signatures we're trying to go for. It would shut down this 34% property tax increase. Roll that back to just 2%. It would have increased transparency for government. If you're spending more than $250,000 of a Title VII money, You have to show us where it's going. We're talking about increased stewardship of the money and everything that you would love to see in local government, especially how they spend your money, giving away grants of land. It would do stuff to increase accountability across the board. Now, in a normal year, there's about 44 to 46,000 people that vote. We need 10% of that number, guaranteed good, qualified signatures in Davidson County to push this ballot through so that we can vote on it on December 5th. If you get 51% of it, all 5 points of this petition go into law. So we need about 43 good signatures, 4,300 good signatures, 4,500 good signatures. As of yesterday, here's the big story, and then move on to some other local stuff, the Sethi story. As of yesterday, I don't want to get too much out in front of the skis here. We still have a lot of work to do. But as of yesterday, we had a little over 6,000 signatures. You guys, man, I'm telling you, we're shooting for a goal of 40-something hundred. As of yesterday, we had 6,000. And this is why I make an appeal one more time to all of you. Help us turn this thing into a major movement. This is what I was talking about, right? We're just a couple days into this effort. We're working on this all the way through September 14th, y'all. We got some time here, okay? Turn this into a major effort. 6,000 signatures at this point right now. Turn it into a movement that's something beyond just this property tax issue. Send a clear message to the entire state that Tennesseans are demanding proper stewardship with our tax dollars and increased transparency outside of just Nashville metro government across the state. Send a signal like a fire stream elsewhere. Share this website with anyone you know, the number 4goodgovernment.com. Share that website with anyone you know that's a registered voter in Davidson County or can get the message to a registered voter in Davidson County. They might know someone that's there, right? Additionally, just help us out with the cause, spread the message, give us ideas as to way to get this message out, anything like that. Anyways, just wanted to give y'all a quick update on that. Y'all are the absolute best. That was more of a story of me just to praise y'all and say like, oh, dude, thank you. Seriously, you guys are the absolute champs. I can't say enough about all y'all. I met my boy Jonathan outside the building. I was about to leave on Friday to go to another location to pick up a tent. Jonathan texts me. He says, like, hey, man, hang on. I'm literally right outside. I want to sign this petition. So we met for all of like, I don't know, 2.5 minutes, gave a quick COVID sanctioned fist bump. He signed it, and then we went off on our ways. We talked a little bit about ham radios, too. Anyways, here's the next story that I really want to bring up with y'all. It's got some national changes to it, but I really want to know where you guys are feeling on this Sethi Hagerty, Manny Sethi, Bill Hagerty primary. And let me make.
All right, but wait. First things first, before you even do the disclaimer.
Yeah.
Why is another person running in Tennessee named Bill? Like, how many Bills do we need? Like, Bill Friss, Bill Haslam, Bill Lee. I'm probably missing like 10 other Bills. Like, is William the most popular, important person name in the state of Tennessee? Can we just have some? I mean, I don't know anything about Bill Hagerty. I'm sure he's a nice guy, and all the other Bills seem to be okay, I guess. But another Bill? That's what I'm naming my kid. Maybe he'll be a senator or governor one day.
Maybe he should just go by William, bro. Right? I hear what you're saying.
That's a powerful name. William is like,
man, it is William Hagerty.
Now, if he was running as William Hagerty, he'd have my vote like right now.
Is that right?
It's like, that reminds me of William Wallace, and he was awesome. So,
right, but William. Oh, that's awesome. Jonathan, by the way, just said, did you know that the Election Commission made me sign an affidavit that I still live at the same address on my licensed voter ID? That's very interesting. I'd not heard of that. He then sent a link to something here. All right, so Jonathan already weighed in here, said Sethi over Hagerty. And I want to make this hard distinction here of describing before I go into this story. All right, anything that we're about to say in this story in particular is 100% just my opinion. Now, I'm not even speaking for Sean here. I'm not even necessarily speaking for the rest of Real News. Just 100% my decision, or my opinion. I make that distinction now very clearly articulated because we just left an Americans for Prosperity related story. I'm jumping into something now that we have nothing to do with at AFP. But I do have some feelings about this race. Now, here's the story from the Tennessee Star. And then I have a clip here in just a second that we're going to play actually from Senator Paul himself that our boy Richard Esparza sent us. Now, if you don't know, you should know, but part of what's going on behind the scenes here is a bit of a picking and choosing sides. And dare I say that it's picking what's really happening. I personally believe, my personal take on the thing, what I think is really going on is a bit of like a McConnell crew setting up against a bit of the Paul crew. And I think it has very little to do with Tennessee issues or values or concerns. I think some of these picking and choosing of sides are not necessarily about endorsing the policies that are going to be best for Tennesseans. I think it's a little bit more about, I don't know, dude, are you backing McConnell or are you backing somebody else? I'll move on. Here's the Tennessee Star story. U.S. Senator Rand Paul told more than 800 people this past Saturday, that he supports U.S. Senate candidate Manny Sethi, not because Sethi is a Republican, but because Sethi is a conservative. It's actually a very apt distinction, especially today's day and age. Nevertheless, Paul appeared alongside Sethi at a former state rep Joe Carr's T-Bones and politics dinner. Carr said that it was a sellout event, and it was. If you go look at those pictures are all over Facebook. It was an absolute sellout event. U.S. President Donald Trump has endorsed Sethi's opponent, Bill Hagerty. Now, that endorsement happened, like a year and a half ago? Was it? It was a while ago, right?
It happened a long time before I cared about the race. That's how long ago it was.
Right.
I know that sounds like mean, but like that's the truth, right? Like that's the truth. Yeah. Like long before I knew who the candidates were, I heard about this endorsement.
That's a great point.
At the beginning, when mist covered the mountains.
Before I even knew that Alexander had stepped down.
Yeah, no, that's kind of true though, right?
Yeah, it is, right.
Long ago, in the way before time.
Before 4 times. Oh man, no, that's exactly right. Before I even knew that there was a Senate race going on, somebody was telling us that this guy Bill Hagerty had been endorsed to replace the person I didn't even know needed replacing. But whatever, there you go. Tennessee Star asked Paul what he would say to average Tennessee Republican who still hadn't decided which of the two candidates to support, and this is what Rand Paul said. At least the quote to the Tennessee Star. He said, "I would tell most people who live in this neck of the woods that Joe Carr knows a conservative when he sees it. And Joe Carr's endorsement is probably worth more than mine, to tell you the truth." Paul's a good politician. He knows that's a good answer. That's a quality answer in Tennessee right there. Anyways, he goes on to say, "But I also know a conservative and someone who is sincere when I see it. I think Dr. Sethi is the real deal. I think the other side got to the president very early. I don't think he had a chance to meet with Dr. Sethi. I think many times what happens in big organizations is that they get the wrong pick. They sort of kick themselves, saying, we should have waited because Dr. Sethi was actually a better supporter." Now, just to give you some weight as to the caliber of individuals, if not the number of individuals that are supporting Dr. Sethi as opposed to William Hagerty, conservative talk radio show host and television personality Mark Levin, he endorsed Sethi, as reported Saturday. Former Senator Jim DeMint, he reported Sethi. DeMint was a Republican from South Carolina, obviously. DeMint, known for his work in the Tea Party, is a University of Tennessee graduate and founder of the Senate Conservatives Fund. Also reported is that Memphis-based Varsity Spirit founder Jeff Webb and former Congressman John Duncan Jr. all have endorsed Sethi, a bunch of Tennessee-related folks. Now, let me play this clip real quick here, just to give you a bit of indication as to how cool Real News really is. Not really, but whatever. We had a guy who was actually there, our boy Richard Sparza. You hear us say this name all the time, and most of the people that are familiar with Real News from back in the day understand when we say his name. But he was heavily involved with us at the AMF inside booking. Man, dude, how many great guests did he get us from? Man, everybody, I think from Judge Andrew Napolitano, who Shine had worked with back in the day, had a lot to do with setting up that interview, all the way from Freeway Rick Ross.
He's as mysterious as the time that Trump endorsed Bill Hagerty. Like, it's like he's from the way back, the before 4 time.
Dude, there's the conspiracy theory. Richard had something to do with that Trump endorsement, dude. Anyways,
that's big brain stuff right there, Grant.
That's big brain stuff. Oh, man. Anyways, Richard was at this event. He got us a recording of what Senator Paul was actually saying. Here's some of the clip right here. We'll play a couple minutes of this and then move on.
100 senators up there. We got 53 Republicans. We got about 3 or 4 that are worth, you know what. And so we looked at the race for a long time. I got to know Manny, got to know what he was for before we got involved. because I am tired of supporting people who then they get up there and they just become a rubber stamp for the establishment and the leadership. Frankly, our problem is not really the Democrats. We know they're wrong, right? We know they're terrible on the deficit. We know they don't care about the deficit. We know they don't care about life or any of those things. The problem is when the Republicans tell you they care and then they get up. Did anybody vote for or give money to a Republican who said they were going to repeal Obamacare? What happened? We have Obamacare not because of Democrats. We have Obamacare still because of Republicans. In fact, y'all might know one of them, but...
We know it.
I sense some enthusiasm here in this group. I think we're really going to sense some enthusiasm in a few minutes with a much bigger group. I appreciate you giving Manny the resources. The thing is, they are blasting him. And we're trying to help too. There's a lot of independent expenditures going around. We're trying to do our part to help as well. But it's got to be worthwhile to be there.
All right, now he goes on for a little while more and rambles. The clip's about 13 minutes long. I'll actually see if I can get that from Richard and put it out on Real News somewhere else for us all to enjoy. But you heard Senator Paul there a second ago say, they are blasting him. And I want to be as fair as possible to some of the coverage here. I mean, Sean actually, brought to my attention one more time, like right before we started the show, like, hey, you are aware of this Massachusetts Manny site, right? Now, I'm not going to go. I have no idea who's funding this. Paid for by team. Okay, well, there you go. It says at the bottom of the page, paid for by Team Hagerty. So, well, we know who's funding this, obviously. Anyways, Massachusetts Manny, while living in, this is a website devoted to, I guess, essentially trying to paint Dr. Manny Sethi as, I don't know, a Republican masquerading, a Democrat, sorry.
As a Mitt Romney Republican, right?
Okay, thank you, yeah.
That's the psychological ties. Remember how much you didn't like Mitt Romney? Mm-hmm. He was from Massachusetts. Dr. Manny Sethi's from Massachusetts, too. Get him.
They need to have you doing a voiceover as soon as you open the website, dude. That's what comes up. You know what I mean?
Dude, you know what, dude? I'm like the Ring of Power. If someone were to hire me, it would be game over, and it's why they can't, and it's why I stay hidden by the wizards here on Real News.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Welcome to Massachusetts Manny, this website says. It's massachusettsmanny.com. A fake conservative hiding a liberal record a mile long. Now, this website says, while living in liberal Massachusetts, Manny Sethi tried to work in Obama's White House. He donated to liberal Democrats and supported Obamacare. He even donated to Act Blue, the left-wing group bankrolling Antifa rioters and Black Lives Matter. All right, so look. Facebook has already told me where their takes are on this. Jonathan and Kelly have both already said Sethi. Now, I would be interested to hear both from Jonathan and Kelly and whoever else is still watching here on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook or whatever else. If you are a Sethi person, why are you a Sethi person? Because what I think is actually going on, let me book in this entire thing and then we'll get to some other national stories here. What I think is actually going on with this story is probably, I don't really have any way to validate this to you other than just to say that those that are in the know probably know what I'm about to say is accurate. I think what's actually going on here is this is probably a play between Paul and some of his folks and McConnell and some of his folks, right? I think McConnell gets up there. He finds this guy Hagerty. Hagerty has donated a bunch of money to the Trump campaign. Not exactly like there's a favor owed. That's not what I'm saying. But Hagerty donated a bunch of money to the Trump campaign. And something came down by the wayside, and McConnell eventually ended up saying, hey, there's our guy, okay? Now, when called upon to McConnell does this. He grooming is not the best word, but he does something where he hand selects folks, and then later on down the road, when you need to pick allegiances, or when you need to vote on something, or when the time comes, McConnell will call upon you to do something. And I know a lot of people are saying right now, this is actually analysis that I'm stealing somebody else's thunder here. This is not my opinion. It's fantastic analysis, what I'm about to say. But when the time comes, some people might be thinking right now, well, how's that going to affect Tennessee? I don't know. I don't know how it would affect Tennessee, but that's the ultimate question, though, isn't it? Like at some point there may be something that affects Tennessee or Tennesseans, or I don't know, something that you vehemently disagree with. And then when the time comes, all of a sudden, because McConnell brought you in, and because McConnell groomed you, and because McConnell gave you shade, because McConnell gave you the direct line to the president, whose endorsement arguably should be a major factor in this, because it was McConnell this, McConnell that, McConnell there. All of a sudden, you kind of owe something to McConnell. It's how the games are played. And again, I have nobody source this. I have nobody cite this. This is my speculation as to what I think is happening. All right. I think McConnell made the inroads, made the connection, and it happened very, very early. And they just needed to shore up that seat because Alexander was kind of a flip flop. He was kind of he was a rogue character, if you will, in this new age of neocons that are trying to go rogue yet again. Couldn't really get him. He was a bit of a rhino. He turned into something else. And Tennessee in general is a state that you got to constantly keep a look after because you just can't really trust some of their politicians sometimes to do or say the right thing. I don't know what the saying is up there in DC. But I think that's what's happening. And I think Paul comes into the backsides because McConnell and Paul don't exactly see eye to eye, shall I say. And when Paul comes in the back and he says, here's this guy, Sethi, who's saying all the right things. He's libertarian leading. He's a true conservative, not just a Republican. And I think that's what's going on. I think what's really happening is this is a play between some arguably more powerful men up in D.C. And I think it has very little to do with Tennessee issues, Tennessee policies, issues that will affect us directly. But as I'm saying that, like, I don't know, is every Senate race like that? I mean, is every Senate race like that to some extent? And should that even become part of our factor? Now, that's my take. And I'll tell you right now where I'm going to stand on some of this stuff is like, look, man, I'd like to see Sethi up there. But, you know, the word on the street in his ways is that Hagerty's got this covered. So I don't know. Let me go back to Facebook here. I'll read some of these comments. Sean, if you want to top in and let us know how you're feeling on any of this too. While I hit some.
I agree that it's a proxy war between Paul and McConnell.
Yeah.
But we also know who usually wins those fights.
Yeah, right.
It's usually McConnell. And it's not because, like, he's a twirling mustache evil person. You know, he's the majority leader. And, you know, I don't know, both the Senate and the House, Republicans and Democrats, don't they have, like, election pots of money to help out other senators and other House members and things like that? Yeah, and he's, like, probably the arbiter of said money. So, like, this is his job, whether it's McConnell or someone else. If there were another Senate majority leader, this would be something that they would do. I would say, or minority leader, right?
Yeah.
And something that's worth saying along with your analysis is theoretically, if Manny Sethi were to win, he'd probably owe Rand Paul a couple votes, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's worth saying. But what I want to touch on and what's annoying to me about this race is this is the best analysis for this race that we're giving right now. This is the best analysis, not here's what this person's into. Here's what Bill Hagerty's into. This is the kind of legislation we may see from him. These are what his interests are. This is what he's passionate about. So when we see him maybe get into a second or third term, what kind of committees he may be on, what kind of committees he may chair, what kind of direction he could take the Senate over the course of his lifetime. Because usually Senate is somewhat of a lifetime appointment. So we should think about like a Supreme Court. I mean, for whatever reason, for better or worse, senators don't usually lose elections once they get elected.
Exactly.
For better or worse.
Right.
So we should be thinking about these people like we'd be thinking about Gorsuch or Kavanaugh.
Man, that's great commentary. That's true, bro. Right?
But we know nothing. We know nothing. Excuse me. Coffee went down the wrong way. But we know nothing. And our analysis is simplified to political water cooler talk. Like, who's backing this guy? Who's backing this guy? Like prize fighters, and we know who their sponsors are. It's so weird. I mean, but this is for both candidates. Both candidates have done a bad job telling me, a Tennessee resident, what they would do, what they're into. What are their long-term life interests? Like, you know, everybody knows that, for Lamar Alexander, by the way, everyone knew he liked education going into it. Now look at him. He sponsored some big education bills in his time and chairs committees involved in education. What is Manny Sethi into? What is Bill Hagerty into? I don't know. And I think that's either by design or maybe they're just, excuse me, not that interesting. Maybe they're just not that interesting. Maybe they don't have anything cool that they want to do. They just like want to hold the torch for a while. I don't know. Or maybe they're into stuff that maybe they don't want me to know. I don't know. I can have all these questions though because they're not answering the important question.
Right.
And when you start asking why, it makes me not want to vote for either of them, to be honest.
Look, I'll tell you my unadulterated, honest opinion. First of all, by the way, I'm glad Shine just said that, because a lot of the rant that I just went on came directly from the conversation that David and I were having before the show started. All right. So when I say now stealing thunder is from him, right? To give full credit where credit's due. My honest opinion on this, and when it comes down to it, if I had to go with someone that had a backing of Paul as opposed to a backing of McConnell, I'm going to go with the guy that has backing of Paul every single time. Now, neither one of those dudes may be where I would like them to be, but exactly what Shine just said. You got major politics. This is a major game they're playing, man. This is big boy stuff. All right. As far as compromise goes, what did Benjamin Franklin said? There's 3 things that make a great legislator: compromise, compromise, compromise. What he meant was, like, in the world of bipartisanship, to get stuff done in this representative republic that we have, you have to be able to do something to move that ball along. And if I'm going to compromise with somebody, dude, I'd far rather compromise with Paul every day of the week than I would with McConnell. Jonathan said in Facebook a second ago that Hagerty is a huge rhino. He's with the Never Trumpers. I think that's the word on the street in Tennessee. He actually went on to say that Jonathan said, well, think about this. The polls across Tennessee has put Hagerty in the loss as of yesterday. I haven't seen that poll, but that would be very, very interesting news, right? Sean, I think what you're saying is dead on correct too, though, man. You know, when these people get up there, every single one of them to a T, primarily because of the number of years they serve in a single term, but also coupled with the fact that incumbency is so insanely difficult to defeat. We have to start looking at these people's lifetime appointments. Dude, what is the combined amount of service? Goodness, I was going to say service is probably not the best way to put some of these people in, but whatever. The combined amount of years served in the Senate or whether else between, who is it, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and Chuck Schumer. I think each one of them is like
1,300 years. 1,300 years, actually. When you combine their service, it's 1,300 years.
They're vampires. They never die.
You know, something else I want to say, too, is we're talking about 2 different rival Kentucky senators being the power behind the people picking our Tennessee senators. Dude. That's another thing, is like, when did Kentucky become so powerful? When did Kentucky become this thing that helps Tennessee picks its legislators? And why is it Tennessee that? We're a lot cooler than Kentucky.
Dude, and when the COVID stuff was popping off in the very beginning, the governor of Kentucky was getting real shady on some of his Twitter posts, dude, about how Tennessee was doing it wrong and like personal attacks against Hagerty. Sorry, not Hagerty. Bill Lee, the bill thing.
The bill thing, I know. It's too many bills. They're like zebras. Man. It's that way people don't know which bill to attack. You know? But yeah, Kentucky's been talking down to us. Their senators are heavily involved in our Senate election. When did this happen?
I don't know, man.
Have we been taken over by Kentucky? Is this what it is?
It's a Kentucky insurgency.
Is there a shadow government running Tennessee from Kentucky? But I want to say this. No matter who wins, I hope they raise our profile enough to where we have that kind of influence. It's amazing that Kentucky has this kind of influence over our elections. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'd like to say I want someone from Tennessee to have that kind of pull. That's what I want. I want someone who makes people go, oh, what do you think the Tennesseans think?
Yes, dude.
What do you think they think? I want that guy. Almost more than I want a certain kind of policy or principle. I want someone that, because where's Lamar?
Yeah.
Where is he? And I'll give Marcia some credit. She leads in her own way. I don't agree with everything she does, because you can't agree with everything anybody does. But she is out there, man. I think she's trying to build that. I want someone like that, kind of. But when did Kentucky get so powerful? It's so weird. We never think of Kentucky as powerful.
He sent us a Facebook message saying Kentucky literally sits over Tennessee. Yes, that's what's happening, both literally and now figuratively in an allegorical sense, I suppose.
I raise my fist to you, Kentucky.
Carol just said in Facebook a second ago, ask them. I got a response from Sethi in 30 minutes. Hagerty never replied. I mean, that's big too, right? Constituent service is a very, very big thing, especially when you're running a campaign like this. If Carol says, I don't know the context of when she sent this message in Facebook, what we're talking about exactly, but I assume what Carol's saying is that she sent some message to Sethi asking about possibly some policy point, whatever. And the point is that she got a response from something she sent within 30 minutes. And Hagerty never replied. That is huge. That is major. And frankly speaking, I don't care if it's some staff member. I think nobody's naive enough to think that Sethi is actually sitting down there answering every single one of his emails. No, but if you have a team put together that's competent enough to be able to represent you and respond to something on behalf of you, dude, that is massive. Even if it's just a robo response sort of email thing, just to let you, like I get those things from Blackburn all the time. You sign some petition or something like, thank you so much for your concern about issue such and such or whatever. Somebody had to take the time to go in there and see that email, figure out what the issue was about, and probably hit, okay, this email responds to this thing, so hit this as a mass respond type thing. Maybe it's all algorithmic driven. I don't care. The point is somebody put the time in to respond to my needs, which is indicative, I think, of what the type of person would be once they get elected, that whole aspect of transparency and everything else. Hey, Sean, as we're getting into the bottom of the hour here, if you could go skip past all that nonsense of the quick recap from yesterday's show, as it's all in the show notes. I'll do that in about 20 seconds here in just a second. But go ahead and pull up that first national story. It's a YouTube link under the first national story. It's called Trump Encourages Americans to Wear Masks. Now, very quickly, let me just bring up a couple local stories, and then we'll go into this next clip here. All right. So the first local story from Tennessee, and as Broadway crowd persists, Nashville mayor will require restaurants to close by 10 p.m. It's basically the entire story. That's all you really need to know. As of Tuesday, Nashville has detected more than 18,000 coronavirus infections, including about 5,600 active cases and 155 virus-related deaths. Now, that's totality numbers, right? About 200 people are currently hospitalized with the virus in the city. Of all virus test results collected by city officials in the past week, 14% have been positive, which is much, much higher than the state average has been. Be careful. Be safe out there. That's what I'm saying. Now, that article goes on to say that most people seen mingling on Broadway do not wear masks or maintain the personal distance required to prevent the spread of the virus. Police have issued hundreds of warnings in an attempt to enforce the city's mask mandate, but stopped short of actual writing citations. Now, similarly, here in Knoxville, WATE headline, coronavirus in Tennessee, federal hotspot team that visited Knoxville calls for statewide mask mandate. So this federal team came in, gave Knoxville an assessment of the situation that's going on in Knoxville. It was the 3-person team. Say it again, Sean, sorry. Oh, he's talking to me. Yeah, Sean's talking to my head, man. This is why we're so good. We've got this team pairing thing going, but he lets me know when the stuff is coming up here. It's a 3-person team in Knoxville. They came with this assessment saying, like, okay, increase the use of mask and face covering, decrease turnaround time for SARS-CoV version 2 testing, and increase the capability to test more specimens, release funding from the state health department to Knox County Health Department. They went through a number of bullet points. You can look at them in the show notes if you want to. Show notes linked at the top of the description, and then Evernote link every single day on this program. But one thing they finalized with was this exact quote right now, which is going to lead into this video from Trump I have here in just a second. Quote, again, the Knoxville, the commission, the 3-person team that came to Knoxville to give an assessment of what's going on over there. Quote, consistent messaging from all levels of government, federal, state, and local, is needed to stem transmission. This message should be that it's important to protect economy and health of our citizens, not either or. Currently, there's a county-wide indoor mask mandate in Knox County, but surrounding counties do not have mandates and are unlikely to pass them. Quote, a statewide mandate is needed. A statewide mandate is needed. My personal opinion is that's probably going in the wrong direction. 2 seconds. Let me explain why. Because I'm sure somebody that's going to be watching this later on, or I'm going to have to answer for that statement in 5 years from now if I'm running for public office myself, whatever it is. Let me explain why I think a statewide mandate is not what's needed, as opposed to just a general intellectual consensus that it may be the correct thing to do, because I decided for myself. What I'm saying is you create a taboo nature around statewide mandates when you force these edicts upon people and attempt to coerce some type of, some type of compliance with these things. You end up just making a lot of people mad, man. And a lot of people won't wear masks now simply because you forced them or told them to wear a mask. They will do it just to spite government. Now, there are several people out there, don't get me wrong, that have actual medical exemptions as to why they shouldn't or don't want to. There are several people out there that just have studied their own research and have decided that's not for me. I don't want to do it. Now, as a libertarian, I do believe there is a certain line whereby your freedom could encroach upon my freedom, and then we'll need to have that conversation. Are we there yet? Possibly, maybe, I don't know. But the point I'm making is the reason why I think the mask thing has become so absurd It's a small piece of cloth on your face, man. It shouldn't be that ridiculous. But the reason why it's become that ridiculous is because of this trash here, because the state has gotten involved and forced it on everyone. We're not able to decide for ourselves, and now you have to pick and choose sides, man. That's why a simple thing like a mask mandate, which Eastern cultures have been doing for as long as some of this stuff has been around, and frankly speaking, Americans used to do all the time. Go look back at the Spanish flu stuff. The reason why there's not a consensus on this anymore is because they've divided, dude. It's so easy to divide and conquer. When you are at your weakest, it is easiest to divide. And that's exactly what's happening right now, dude. We can't have a genuine, nuanced conversation about anything relating to masks because it's become politicized. So here's what I'm saying. This commission comes in to Knox County and says we need a statewide mandate. And what I think needs to be happening, Sean, if we can go ahead and play this clip from President Trump. I think what we need to have is more conversations like this. And I know this is a show that from time to time, let's praise President Trump, whatever, man. I'm honest about my own bias, but I would hope you would know that my bias lean libertarian before anything else. I hate the cult of personality as much as anybody else. But there's some type of open conversation, I think, from President Trump. Just hear what he has to say about it as well. Try and go ahead and play that clip if you could.
That when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get. Okay, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Yesterday you said that wearing a mask was an act of patriotism. If that is the case, why don't you do it more frequently?
Well, I do actually do it when I need. I mean, I carry the mask when I have to go. I went into Walter Reed Hospital the other day. I have the mask right here, and I carry it, and I will use it gladly. No problem with it. And I've said that, and I say, if you can, use the mask. When you can, use the mask. If you're close to each other, if you're in a group, I would put it on when I'm in a group. If I'm in an elevator and there are other people with me, including like security people, it's not their fault. They have to be in the elevator. I want to protect them also. I put on a mask. I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. You saw me wearing it a number of times, and I'll continue. Please.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up?
Go ahead, please.
So are you sending mixed messages? So yesterday you tweeted out an image wearing a mask, and then last evening we saw you not wearing a mask at your hotel.
Well, I don't know the hotel. I was pretty far away from people, but I would say this. I've explained it, I think, very well. If you're close together, I would put on the mask. And if you're not, I would say that if you're, for instance, I'll see, like here, you've been all tested, I've been tested. Oftentimes I'll be with people that are fully tested, I've been tested. In theory, you don't need the mask. I'm getting used to the mask. And the reason is, think about patriotism. Maybe it helps. It helps. Now, we have experts that have said in the recent past that masks aren't necessarily good to wear. You know that. But now they've changed their mind. If they change their mind, that's good enough for me. So I wear it when appropriate.
Today, the president held what was
all right,
billed.
You can stop it there, Sean. All right, so listen to my appeal one more time. In the grand scheme of what is more likely to convince someone to voluntarily wear a mask, because pause for a second. That's what we're talking about, just so we're all on the same page. Okay? To my knowledge, in Tennessee in particular, I don't know if there's a lot of police that are running around here arresting people for not wearing masks. I mean, we just read a story in Nashville alone. The police are not even citing people for it. They're issuing warnings. The point I'm making is the enforcement mechanisms that are behind some of these alleged mandates aren't really even doing anything to accomplish the goal. So my appeal to anybody in any of this, and then I'll hit some of the Facebook comments here, is in the grand scheme of what we're talking about. If some people are trying to get other people to wear masks and other people are trying to say, I don't want to wear a mask, in that conversation, what is more likely to get a point across from either side? Is it a state mandate that's not even going to be enforced? Or is it a conversation from like what we just heard from President Trump of like, look, man, I know the CDC and the WHO at the very beginning they said masks shouldn't be. And now they're saying the mask should be. And what we're all trying to figure out in this confusing soup of whatever America is right now, who can dive to the bottom of this cesspool the fastest, we're all trying to figure out and make sense of it, man. But I'm telling you where I'm coming from as president. If it's something that can help stop it, if anything can help stop it right now, then let's do something to help stop it. My personal opinion is that style of rhetoric, that conversation, that open discourse is going to be far more effective in convincing or not convincing, I guess, than a state mandate would be. That's my only point with bringing this up. If you don't have police people that are going to go out there and arrest you and put you in jail, which is not going to happen, then at the end of the day, how effective is a state mandate going to end up being? I think you're just upsetting people. I think you're just needlessly upsetting people. If you're trying to stoke more fear, the media is doing a good enough job of that on its own. Okay, I don't think you need a state mandate to come in there and stoke more fear. Frankly speaking, I don't think you need a state mandate to come in there and enforce to these people how serious of a virus this may or may not be. I think we've done a pretty good job of that ourselves on our own. These stats are thrown out here every single day, man. We're chumming the water with these stats all the time. I'm rambling a little bit, but you get my point. My point is just that. I think state action in this is going to prove to be antithetical. It's going to do the exact opposite of what you think it's going to do. I think open conversation from our leaders about what they've heard, convincing your fellow man, I think is going to be the better thing. Let me hit some of these Facebook comments, by the way. Jonathan said the mask thing, I hate it. It's not the correct method to fight the virus. Matt said medical Sharia. Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. This is exactly the point that I'm making, man. Jonathan said mask it's not the way to fight it. Matt said that the medical Sharia, when these conversations are going on, you think a state mandate's going to do something to help this situation? No, dude. Matt says it's medical Sharia. Nobody's going to be convinced by the state shoving a gun barrel at you and saying, put this mask on now.
Well, at the very least, too, if there's going to be mandates, it should be done by the legislature. If they want to do something like that in Tennessee statewide, there should be a special session of the legislature. It should be signed by the governor. It should go through the normal process, and I think less people would have a problem with it. And I think right now, more important than any, and we talk about this with elections, but it's true with laws, too. Right now, the most dangerous thing to America is not the virus. It's people not believing in the institutions. And governments should make the highest priority making those institutions solvent in the imaginations of the American people. If that makes sense. There's a debt of trust. People already before this didn't trust the government for various reasons on both sides or all sides of the political spectrum. And when they do things arbitrarily, like some unelected board saying there should be masks, or a health director saying there should be masks, or a governor saying something that applies to every resident in the state, not going through the legislature, it's like I agree with you that there's going to be people that have problems with it, but there's going to be less people who have problems with it if we go through the important process of legislation. The reason we do that is not because it's the fairest way. It's because it's the way that keeps everyone thinking they have a stake. They have involvement. So when things they disagree with come down, they can say, well, the people decided. Now, when you can look at one man and say, oh, that one man decided, it's easy to turn that one man into an other or an enemy, therefore turning the institution into an other or an enemy. And we need people to engage in these institutions. They are the ones that protect us. They're the ones that are supposed to provide justice and safety and, and all those things. So I would be more okay with it if it came through a legislative process. And I think a lot of Tennesseans would too. I think the arbitrary nature of it is hurting its own cause. Worse than the virus could hurt us.
Jessica just said in Facebook a second ago, a lot of people are very upset with the governor and our Secretary of Health. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think she's talking about the Pennsylvania one, just relating this to what's going on in Tennessee as well. She said, Jessica went on to say, yeah, my dad is furious. Honest to God, our governor put a mandate for masks. Everyone is all over the place with this. Jonathan said there's not a single elected official willing to wade into political fire of requiring mask wearing with criminal consequences. Well, that's absolutely the truth. He said there's a straight ticket to it. That's a straight ticket to a failed election, even within the city limits of Nashville. And again, let me be totally clear here. Look, man, I'll eat this stuff later on. If I'm wrong about it, I'm totally fine with that. And I also admit every single day when I come on this show that I am a self-proclaimed hypochondriac. So I have an extreme bias when it comes to covering some of these stories. I've not been diagnosed with anything, but like speaking for real, man. I got a psychological problem, okay? So I personally think, given the general consensus that's out there, at an absolute minimum, wearing respect is probably wearing respect. Maybe that's what I should say. You're wearing respect. That's basically where I'm coming from. Wearing a mask is a sign of respect, if nothing else, to your fellow man when you're going out in public. Because if it is true that it can stop some type of saliva spread or whatever else that is, man, if we're asymptomatic spreading, I don't know. The general consensus being that it's a sign of respect to help stop the spread or something. That's where I'm saying, in a libertarian sense, if my freedom is going to juxtapose and butt up against another person's freedom, well, then I want to make that personal decision to do something about it prior to the government coming in and forcing me to do that. That's just where my worldview leads me. I've been very honest about this from the very beginning, but I think absolutely what Matt, Mr. Fritz, Jessica, everybody else is saying in Facebook right now, it's like the hyperpolarization, politicization even of this issue right now is not helping anybody. And let me, look, Sean, you're going to have to share your sound again here after I do this. Sorry, buddy, but let me share this real quick, okay? To be totally fair, these are statistics, the percentage of Americans that are at least openly admitting that I wear a mask every single time I go outside. Or maybe I'm not sure how they got this polling done or whatever. I should have looked into that a little bit more. But suffice to say that this is the same statistic that a lot of other major, mainstream media organizations have been throwing around recently. Man, are we already at 9:47? So U.S. is sitting pretty much right in the middle of the pack here of percentages of people that are actually wearing masks. Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, Australia, UK, Canada, France, Taiwan, all well below us. Now, admittedly, there are a bunch of other countries that are well above us. And I suppose for their own reasons. And maybe you could do some type of, variable analysis or some other type of statistical chart out or whatever to show like, hey, are these countries up here, are they faring a lot better? And I think the big variable that needs to be taken into account is that this country, in particular, U.S., we're the ones with the most deaths. So is this stat even worth considering? I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe this is a uniquely American problem. Maybe this is something we just need to focus on ourselves. I do think there's another problem that making very strange transition here out of this story in the last couple minutes because I didn't realize I rambled this long here. Kelly just said a little while ago in here something that may not be that is not a uniquely American problem, but I'm not sure when it will become our problem. So she says, China, that absolutely horrible clip you played yesterday. We have time to do it today. I'll play it again if you want to. The clip she's referencing is in China. Chinese officials are just rounding up Muslims, Uyghur Muslims, shaving their heads, blindfolding them, literally loading them onto trains, shipping them off to re-education camps, as they call them. But come on, man, whatever word you put on top of that, we all know what's going on. The BBC had the Chinese ambassador to UK on the program yesterday and showed him this clip and just straight up asked him, like, what is going on here? And there wasn't even a song and dance done, man. The guy, the ambassador didn't try to deny it. He didn't try and say anything about it. He just like, I don't, dude, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. Kelly goes on to say that absolutely horrible clip you played yesterday, that's the one she's referencing on the ambassador from China. Today, we've seen Houston, Texas, the Chinese consulate, literally a literal dumpster fire. So my thoughts. What can the world as a whole do about China? What will happen to the U.S. if we actually do go to war with China? Is it obviously about already happening on a small scale, but it's ramping up for sure? Now, I hate to draw this line of comparison, man, because I don't know. I try and remain consistent and objective and truthful and all these other words. And I think false equivalency is a very real thing. So I'm gonna preface all this stuff by making this comparison with what's going on with the whole Portland situation. And I don't know if that's what Kelly's referencing or not, but let me just stick with the China thing for a second. What, if anything, do Americans do about this, man? And this is a difficult spot for a lot of libertarians to be in, right? When we're seeing something like that going on in China, every sense of my non-interventionist being wants to say, like, whatever, that's their deal. Don't get involved. Don't mess with it. But at the same time, it's like, dude, really? Like, really? I mean, I don't know. We're not talking military intervention, or are we? Because there's a lot of other organizations out there that don't want any of this stuff. They don't want to bring this up at all, dude. Have y'all seen Mark Cuban recently? Seen his tweets recently? The guy doesn't want to touch this issue with a 10-foot pole because the NBA, if y'all don't realize this, the NBA gets the overwhelming majority of its revenue from China. The National and National Basketball Association, I presume, one might be led to presume, is referencing the nation of America. Not China, but whatever. They get the overwhelming majority of their revenue from China, so they certainly don't want to make the cash cow mad. They're definitely not going to bite that hand that feeds. And when they've been asking about situations from NBA, and Hollywood's doing the same thing now as well, what are you going to say about the stuff going on in China? You guys have the voice right now. You have the platform. Mark Cuban, you're on like 2 different shows right now, bro. And you've seen all these people come out there and sort of force cops to say, can you say that Black Lives Matter? They're doing the same thing to Mark Cuban right now, asking him on Twitter, say, can you say free Hong Kong? There was even a viral story going around for a little while, which by the time I checked the NBA website, this was no longer going on. But apparently for a while, you would go to the NBA website and you can customize jerseys. And on the back of these customization of jerseys, you could put everything you wanted to. I mean, you could put the F word on there. You could put all kind of but as soon as you typed in free Hong Kong, this little message came up on the bottom that said, I'm sorry, we cannot complete your order. We cannot complete that terminology. We cannot, it just doesn't work. Now, there was probably some, that's confirmation bias a little bit. I'm sure there was probably something else going on behind the scenes. Maybe it hit a letter limit. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But it fits the narrative nicely, doesn't it? Kelly's saying, so what do we do about something like this, man? Because I'm telling y'all, if we don't recognize soon that a Marxist communist ideology can lead very quickly into some of the worst, if not the worst, treatment of minorities in the history of our human species, we may be doomed to repeat some of the same mistakes here. And that I do not think is a false equivalency. I do not think that is a logical slippery slope. Illogical slippery slope, that is. That I do not think, when you're talking about some of this stuff going on in Portland, man, let me finish the show by this. Portland problems continue. Here's where we are on the show notes. GOP senators are fearing Trump's use of, quote, secret police is unconstitutional. That's what Senator Merkley, or however you say it, I don't care. That's a Newsweek headline here. We talked about that the other day. Now, the NYPD had a somewhat similar situation going on, but it didn't really exactly resemble the same amount of violence. It just became essentially a homeless camp. And they put public safety first while respecting constitutional rights. That decision will be made by the NYPD as things emerge. We're looking at that situation every day. He was talking about possibly clearing the encampment, which they did yesterday. So I bring all this now back to Portland as to what's currently going on. And I know some of y'all, again, man, you may not like me connecting some type of communist ideology with what's going on in Portland, but frankly speaking, I'm not the one doing this. I'm not making that connection. There is no connection that should or shouldn't be made. It's exactly what is being espoused. Am I missing something here? I mean, I'm genuinely asking. That's not rhetorical. Let me know on Facebook if I'm missing something here. I'm totally willing to admit that I'm missing something, but I've researched this fairly well, and I'm pretty sure I know what's going on here. Now, as far as which organization is responsible, I don't know. I don't think it matters. Some organizations, some publications have been telling me it's Black Lives Matter. Some have been telling me it's Antifa. Others have been telling me it's just an anti-ICE protest with neither one of the other organizations associated with. All I do know is that there's been about 53 days of ongoing, some call it protests, and then it easily spills over into full-on riots and destruction and vandalism and just general senses of violence. Finalizing with this headline here from National Review: the disgrace of Portland. For months, Democratic authorities have tacitly endorsed violent riots, if only mobs were allowed to destroy federal property without consequences. Now, here's the quote. Following along in the show notes if you want to. I have it highlighted in yellow. Then, there would not have been, he's saying if you would just let these federal properties be destroyed without any consequences, he says, then there would not have been any dispute over federal agents defending a federal courthouse in Portland, or said it could simply be overrun and burned to the ground with no unwelcome resistance. Now, obviously, he's playing a little bit of social commentary, some satire. He's being a little bit satirical, obviously, of saying, well, if the local government's not going to stop it, then the federal government, it's just like have free at it, right? If only they weren't destroying federal property, then if they could do it without consequences, then nobody would have a problem. Now, this is where immediately, as I've been sifting through and synthesizing and trying to discover how I'm feeling about the situation going on in Portland over the last couple of days, I think it's this very notion that is confusing me so much. The argument that as long as it's federal property that's being destroyed, we have some kind of justification for the federal government to get involved. The argument does it seems to be a sticking point for many advocating for federal involvement. That is, destroying federal buildings is the reason why federal government can come in there. Now, yesterday, we spoke about Senator Rand Paul's response to this, basically saying, like, this is a problem. Violence needs to be shut down, but it should be local authorities that are doing it. We have a major problem when federal government starts overstepping their 10th Amendment restrictive bounds because the policing power is still left with the state. That was Senator Paul's approach. The retort to that from the National Review has been this: as long as it's federal government buildings that are being destroyed, well, now all of a sudden we have a justification. I'm not sure it works as well as those that are advocating that position might think that it is. The premise essentially implies that as long as the violence is directed at something other than federal property, federal troops would have no justification at all to quell the violence. Yet those areas would still be left with unchecked violence. And it is the unchecked violence that is upsetting people, not the fact that the violence is directed at federal buildings. In a very general sense, I don't think anyone's getting out there and saying, like, man, I really wish our local authorities would stamp down on some of this stuff because I love that federal courthouse. They're just saying, like, this stuff is nonsense, man. The chaos needs to stop. Or so I've heard. And to be totally, completely fair, a lot of this stuff did just start as general protest, and a lot of it has just been general protest. But there is that very fine gray line, man. And yet, as I'm saying this, I still do have to admit that, as this article indicates, it is a federal courthouse that has been the target, the sole target almost, of these protesters for about 50 days. Here's the quote. Although the federal courthouse has done nothing to provoke the protesters and has been standing at the same spot since 1997, it's been a constant target. Protesters have smashed its glass doors, covered its exteriors with graffiti, and repeatedly attempted to light it on fire. This has been happening since at least early July. And for those that think I'm exaggerating a little bit as to the amount of violence that may be caused, here's just a quick rundown of a few of the local headlines. May 28th, a few headlines of the timeline of the website that we're talking about from KOIN. May 29th here, massive vigil in North Portland leads to declared riot downtown. Started out as a vigil, something went off, police declared it as a riot downtown. May 30th, curfew imposed and ignored. For June 30th, police union building protests, another riot was declared by police. At some point, the police union building in that exact story was lit on fire. So what I'm saying is, man, like, the justification to say the federal government should be involved here because it's federal targets, that federal buildings that are being targeted, so they're just protecting their federal buildings, I don't think necessarily stands up the entire time. If, however, you are going to make the case that the federal government needs to intervene to maintain peace and protect its citizens, then stick with that justification, or at least lead with that justification. It is arguably the most rational and consistent approach to take anyways. Ensuring public welfare and protecting against enemies, both foreign and domestic, is absolutely a role of the federal government. If you're going to advocate that the federal government should be in here stopping this. And this is the whole sticking point, man. And frankly speaking, I just wasted 13 minutes on this entire rant, and I don't even know where I stand on this still. Because what's really, truly frustrating about this whole catch-22, man, is that if I don't like, in a libertarian sense, if I don't like the federal government coming in and overstepping their 10th Amendment bounds, it's not like the problem's going to be solved by local authorities. Because local authorities have been very clear and open about the idea that they're not going to stop it. So what then do I do? Do I just like say, well, okay, man, at least as far as it pertains to Oregon's, like, sorry, not sorry, I'm going to wipe my hands clean of even any type of concern for those citizens over there. You guys elected those officials in there, man. You guys kind of have to deal with the results of this. I mean, if your people are going to burn the streets down and they're going to set stuff on fire, they're going to break your buildings, they're going to cause your insurance rates to skyrocket, that's on you. And we should have nothing to say about that. Just let that happen. It's got to let itself play out. It's like one of the guests told me one time on Real News back in the FM days, man, it's kind of like designating a pee only zone in the pool. Eventually that stuff's going to saturate and travel downstream, won't it? I mean, I don't know, dude. Like, at some point, Oregon's problem is going to become Washington's problem, is going to become California's problem, is going to become Utah, Nevada's problem. It's going to, do you get what I'm saying? You see where I'm going? So I don't know how frustrating this is for y'all. It's super frustrating for me. I went on a 13-minute rant. I really don't know where I stand on some of this stuff still, man, because it's almost a little bit like Jessica said earlier in the show. Like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, for a totally different reason, totally different situation here, man. And I know this is a bit of fence riding for me. And frankly speaking, dude, I don't know what to do about it. I don't. This is straight up cognitive dissonance I'm dealing with right now. I'm being totally honest about that. Shine, let me kick it to you for any type of commentary on this, and then I'll catch up with some of the Facebook comments as we end the program here too, man.
Well, I want to ask, is it just the property that these people are attacking, and are they protesters? No, they're not protesters, and they're not just attacking the building. The whole movement has been about dismantling the U.S. justice system, the legal system. It's been, and the building is a symbol for that. They're not just attacking the building. They're not burning the post office, right? They're attacking the courthouse. And as I talked about yesterday, there is precedent out west, especially out west. This happened during the frontier times all the time, where people didn't recognize federal authority and federal judges. So they sent the army in. That's what they did. It's been happening out west for a long time. It's part of their history. If we lived out there, we would know about it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this is foreign to us as people who live on this side of the Mississippi. But this is part of a lot of those states' state history, where there were movements in states where the state government couldn't do anything about it or chose not to do anything about it and didn't recognize federal authority, and they sent the army in. Also, I mean, there are people, and I did it on the show the other day, that are equating this to the attack on Fort Sumter, South Carolina, where it was a state-sanctioned attack. The state of South Carolina sanctioned the attack on a U.S. government fort. And that was seen as a declaration of war. Like, it's one thing if it's a group of miscreants, right? A local militia of some kind. It's totally different when the state government backs that local militia against the federal government. And that's why I get back to, are these protesters? Are they even rioters? I don't think so. I think they're local militia fighting against the federal government with the backing of the attorney general, the governor, and the mayor, which makes it something totally different, in my opinion. It's not rioters. It's not protesters. And your thing about it spreading out of Oregon like it'll take a long time, that's not taking the threat seriously enough, I think. If people see that you can get the government to back your militia, then that's going to become the new mode of change, so to speak. That's going to be part of the diversity of tactics. We've talked about on this show before, Grant, and we've had personal conversations. Democrats aren't worried about winning elections, at least these federal ones, or the federal representation, legislator. They want the attorney general. They want the district attorney. They want the mayor, so that they can form these militias and have local government sanction them. So they can go throw off federal authority in a symbolic and literal way by burning down federal symbols. You get what I'm saying? This is a test, in my opinion. This is a test where they have the backing of local officials, DA, attorney general, mayor, governor, and others, even their own senators in D.C. are supporting them. And I don't know if you're talking about a policing action at that point, when it's a local militia and the state government. Are we really talking about the federal government doing a policing action when the state of Washington is involved in sanctioning their militia? Or is it something else? Is it state, and I mean not the state like U.S. government, is it the state of Washington committing insurrection against the United States government? That's the question. And people, and I'm not bringing this up like from the far away place, like on the outside of the argument. Other people are bringing this. I didn't come up with the Sumter thing. Some senator did. So that's the debate. And if that's the debate, we are in very serious times. And this is not just like a group of protesters that the federal government is policing, in my opinion. At least there's an argument for that.
Well, I think this always sort of, at least on Facebook, when I'm reading some of these comments go back and forth, and happens in a lot of the libertarian groups I follow and everything else, it sort of always devolves into, All right, so what was the epicenter? What was the spawn point of how did it all start? And by it all, I mean the violence itself. What kicked it off? Because I even just went through a couple scenarios, even headlines. Where's that headline I was talking about a second ago, where it said something to the effect of like vigil, right? Vigil started, and here we go. Massive vigil in North Portland leads to declared riot downtown. Like even that statement in a headline indicates of what I'm seeing in these libertarian comment sections going back and forth, that it started peaceful, and then when the police showed up, it was because of the police presence and the violence that the police were acting, and basically the protesters were acting in self-defense. And then it just becomes this tit for tat whataboutism of who started what, and like, I don't know.
Sounds like they've read the Antifa handbook about self-defense. That's their tactic, is to claim self-defense. That's what they teach all their people. And then when asked about their definition of self-defense, they say, well, self-defense takes many forms. Did they need self-defense to attack a U.S. federal building for 51 days? Is that self-defense? And what are we, in elementary school, talking about who started it? Who cares? No one cares who starts wars. People only care who ends them and who wins them. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, I'm not trying to paint libertarians with a wide brush, but like, get out of elementary school about who started it. And well, if they hadn't, but for there is no action a human takes that is required. Every action every human takes is a choice. Every single one. So they didn't have to attack a federal courthouse for 51 days because someone didn't let them have a vigil. They didn't have to do that. We're libertarian. Why are people saying things like, well, they did this, so they had to do it? Why would a libertarian say it? Going back to the Joe Jorgensen thing, why are people saying people have to do stuff and calling themselves libertarians? That's weird. Nobody has to do anything. I hate to go down that road, but it's like, what is going on with that stuff in these comments, these places you're reading stuff? I mean, and here's the deal. If libertarians were having their own kind of political moment, what they're saying is we wouldn't want the federal police to come after us. But I would like to think that if libertarians were having their own political moment, they wouldn't be burning stuff down. They would be defending what is theirs, but they wouldn't be go looking for a fight, probably. At least I would hope not.
Matt said in Facebook a second ago, paid agitators. Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of that going on right now. I think there's a lot of the paid agitator stuff going on. Hey, I know we got to end the program here, by the way, too. And Sean, if you could share sound again there. I kind of took that from you earlier. Sorry, buddy. But on the way out here, let me direct people to one thing. And I direct people to this cautiously. Be very, very careful about clicking on this headline. It's not like the imagery isn't terrible. Well, that's not. The images are not terrible. There's under the national stories in the show notes here. After about 2 or 3 seconds down, there's a graphic warning there. Now, Blake Lively, this speech was about 3 years ago. She gave an emotional speech about child trafficking, among other things, at some Vanity Fair. Who knows? I don't care what she was winning, man. But I just want to direct people to this on the way out. In the show notes, click the Evernote link at the top of the show. If the words that she uses to describe some of the stuff that happens in this country and elsewhere, what people pay for, is some of the most grotesque stuff I've ever heard in my entire life. It is. And if you want to know why I, in particular, keep saying that the stuff that Epstein was involved in was the pinnacle of evil, watch that video. It's about 8 minutes long. But I would say, just be forewarned, the stuff that she described, you're not gonna be able to get rid of it. It's gonna be stuck in your brain for the rest of your life. I think being aware that stuff is happening now, I think we should all be aware that stuff is happening. But that's all I'll say on that one, man. I just want to describe you one more time why I believe that stuff is the absolute pinnacle of evil. It's just, hey, man, my name is Mr. Henry. I love each and every one of y'all in all sincerity. I say that every single day, and I know Sean agrees with this as well. This is Real News Family, doing real things, real friends. Real news, real friends. We are signing off today. We'll be back tomorrow doing a big. Love y'all.